Are you struggling for consistency in your sim racing? Does your iRating look like a roller coaster? If so, we have good news for you. The way to get more consistent is to first understand what you're doing differently than the professionals. And VRS is the answer. With our competitive subscription, you will have the telemetry, setups, tutorials, and everything else you need to fully analyze your driving. Our data packs and the ability to compare your driving with the best in the world will show you exactly where to adjust your inputs, change your driving line, and shave seconds off of your lap times. And our powerful and precise Direct Force Pro wheelbase and precision pedals are being used by some of the world's best drivers. All these champions agree that VRS hardware is not just the best on the market, it's also priced well below the competition. So if you're looking to upgrade to direct drive and the best pedals in sim racing, VRS is your answer. If you want to get better, get faster, and make it happen sooner rather than later, you owe it to yourself to find out why so many people are switching to VRS. You'll be so glad that you did. Visit www.virtualracingschool.com and learn why the best use VRS.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Ray Esports Racing League's 6th season, the Summer Tour, presented by Spec Racer Sports, Alliance Autosport, and Grassroots Motorsports Magazine here on Apex Racing TV. Over the course of 9 weeks and then the winner-take-all runoffs, we hope to bring you some of the best racing around in 3 different classes known to club racers here in the United States: Spec Miata, Spec Racer Ford, and the Formula 4 Formula Cars. I'm Greg Ginsburg, and along with Tim Cox in the commentary booth and Dennis Branch in the virtual production trailer. And tonight we're going to head from America's National Park of Speed, where we were just last week, to the course that just over 50 years ago put the can in Can-Am, where its sweeping high-speed corners played home to the first Formula One Canadian Grand Prix. Welcome everybody to Canadian Tire Motorsports Park, still affectionately known as Mosport. And as we do each week, we'll feature 2 20-minute sprint races. First on track tonight will be our Formula 4 drivers, followed by Spec Miata. And after somehow making it past that huge lap 1 pileup last week at Road America, I've been assured that our Spec Racer 4 drivers will indeed be joining us in 2 weeks for their next round. And so, Tim, first off, good evening and welcome to the home of the Common Loon and Bobby Hall. Gosh, I say this almost every time. Not Carolina Motorsports Park, but Canadian Tire Motorsports Park, Mosport.
Well, I enjoyed your brilliant pun there, putting the can into Can-Am, and these drivers will need a can-do attitude towards commitment around here, Greg. It's lots of fast, sweeping corners, a little bit deceptive when you look at the track map, because it looks like a relatively simple circuit. However, these long, sweeping corners, they're really, really challenging, especially for me, Greg. The one that always catches myself out, and a lot of new first-time drivers to this circuit is, well, not just where we're seeing Greenfield there run wide, it's actually turn 2, which looks like it should be taken pretty much flat out, but it tightens up on exit. And
it does.
Of course, this circuit, Canada's first permanent motor racing facility.
That is right. The very first one. Track is a little bit over 60 years old now, about 61 years old. And I said 50 years old, but 50 years since Can-Am first drove there in the early 70s. But it is the longest running permanent road course north of the border in Canada, and as you mentioned, very, very tough layout here. Lots of fast sweeping corners, and then of course the enigma, the corner that usually halfway or more through a race seems to throw drivers off, is Moss Corner, a double apex right-hander, very much like a hairpin that leads you onto the longest straightaway here, but with a rise in elevation and then having the track flatten off going into it, it always creates trouble for drivers as they try to, one, get their braking done, and two, try to get their power down for that long straightaway, the Mario Andretti straightaway.
You said about Moss Corner. Interesting one about this was it was a visiting Sterling Moss, Sir Sterling Moss, to give him by his official title. When he was showing circuit plans, he immediately suggested changes to create what is now Moss Corner with those two 90-degree right-handers to obviously slows things down a bit. It's a bit of a tricky corner, Greg, because it's almost like it's like a tabletop where you come up onto it and really easy to understeer the car through there. Regardless, even if you've got high downforce cars like the F4 cars that we're going to see first here tonight, or even a low downforce car that, like the Miatas we're going to have shortly afterwards. It's such a tricky corner. It's so easy to run wide out there, and I think for me that's going to be a real hot spot for danger and action and excitement, especially on the first few opening laps with cold tyres.
Always here. And interesting to note, Tim, that as you mentioned, Sir Sterling Moss made the suggestion that they change that and reprofile that portion of the course from a true hairpin into that double apex turn to make it more challenging. But he did it after winning the very first race ever held here at Mosport back in I believe it was 1956. So. Certainly had the experience. It's not like he just looked at the track map and said, "Oh, I think that's going to be a much better layout and much more challenging." But tell you what, now we have our drivers out on course. They are out for their 15-minute qualifying session, for an open qualifying session. And as you can see here, as we're just about 2/3 of the way through qualifying, Caleb Patry, who was our Season 2 RE2000 champion. He is currently your provisional pole sitter with a fast time of 1:17.202. Zach Burke, currently sitting 2400ths of a second back in as second fastest. Tyler Campbell, who put in some time in the iRacing's Skip Barber F4 Challenge just a few weeks ago. He's currently the third fastest driver, only 17 thousandths of a second back. And then we've got Morgan Burkhardt, who took the win last week at Road America. He is currently the fourth fastest driver here out on track. And so, Tim, quickly here, why don't I just give a quick rundown of the finishing order, the podium at Road America, and after 1 week, we'll take a look at the point standings here, as over the course of this 9-week season, each one of our 3 different classes, they will race 6 times in order to determine a champion. And taking the win at Road America by a margin of 1400ths of a second, Morgan Burkhardt. Caleb Patry, our provisional pole sitter, after having a great recovery drive. He went off track early on in the 20-minute race last week and managed to move himself up from 4th all the way up to, again, 1400ths of a second back when they crossed the stripe there in Elkhart Lake. He finished in second. Justin Huffman finished on the last step of the podium in 3rd, with his father Jameson finishing just off the podium in 4th. John Vogel finished 5th. And so if we take a look at the points, well, it's going to be pretty self-explanatory with Morgan Burkhardt currently sitting with 26 points. He had picked up 1 bonus point for running a clean race, for not putting the car off track. Caleb Patry came in with 21 points, just behind, surprisingly enough, not Jameson Huffman, but his father Justin, who picked up 3 bonus points over the course of the evening. And so he is now sitting tied with Patry for second. Sitting in 4th position is Jameson Huffman with 17 points, and only 1 point back from there is John Vogel. All right, so Tim, as we've got drivers out on course for their qualifying session. I mean, certainly as you would expect with Formula Car racing, you're not, and I'm sure it'll be very different when we see the Miatas out here in just a little bit, the MX-5s. Certainly not using the draft here. Although in talking to Tyler Campbell, he was saying that that these F4 machines, they don't seem to be affected that much by dirty air. It really doesn't end up stalling out the front of the car all that much if they sit right off the gearbox of the car ahead of them for an extended period of time.
Absolutely, smack on there, Greg. I've been driving the F4 a lot since it came to the iRacing service. Really, really great fun car. Doesn't suffer from dirty air like you see in the Formula 1 cars, for example. And just invokes great wheel-to-wheel racing right from the go to the very end. You get plenty of slipstream in them as well. You expect to see that down, well, I say down, effectively it's actually up the Mario Andretti straightaway. You can see just from the camera angle there, see John Vogel heading up the hill. And then this is where I've seen it numerous times before, Greg. It gets really interesting. You can pretty much run too wide all the way through the S's, and if you're careful, and it does get closer, but it does really compromise your exit for both drivers through whites, the final corner. So this is going to be tricky, and I don't think we're going to find out quite who's going to come out into victorious until that checkered flag flies. I know that's a little bit of a cliche, but this is going to chop and change quite a bit, and you can see it right now. Qualifying ongoing, our top two separated by exactly 1/100th of a second.
Yeah, amazingly close here. As you said now, as Tyler Campbell goes to the top of the timing pylon there, he is your provisional pole sitter with only 30 seconds remaining on the clock. Now, I mentioned I mentioned Tyler Campbell had raced multiple events in that National iRacing Skip Barber F4 series. Caleb Patry made his presence known for one of those rounds as well. Again, that was a series where they would have about I'd say somewhere along the lines of 400 to 500 drivers at the beginning of the week running time trials to qualify, and the 20 fastest drivers in the world would make the big show each week, and some huge prizes given away there, including seasons behind the wheel of the Skip Barber F4 cars and the Skip Barber Racing Series, some driver school events as well. As the checkered flag now, Tim, is out on the session, last flying laps will count as we're tracking Zach Burke, our sole Canadian in the field, and he is on his last flying lap, currently qualified fourth, looking to best at least a 117.4, which is Morgan Burkhard's fast lap of the session, and we'll see if he can move at least to the inside of row number 2, and perhaps leapfrog Caleb Patry if he can turn in a 117.11. No! And Tim, I think it's safe to say that Zach Burke is not going to complete his last flying lap. As we talked about going side by side through the last couple of corners, through the S's, through 8, 9, and 10. Well, it didn't seem to work out for Mr. Burke going through turn 9 there, as he was getting ready to come onto the front straight.
No, one of the things that these cars do suffer from is lift-off oversteer. So that's where you come off the throttle and the rear end becomes incredibly light and wants to catch up with the rear, and you'll find it slide around. Now, that can play into your advantage, but for a corner like the S's, it's better just to leave a little bit of throttle input in there just to engage the diff and allow for that more steadier turn-in and constant radius. Otherwise, you do run the risk of exactly what we've just seen there.
Yeah, so very unfortunate there. So it looks like Zach Burke is likely going to hold on to that position on the outside of row number 2, as I believe the only driver that had been left on track was Josh Justice. He's called off his last flying lap, and so we should have the starting grid. And tell you what, Tim, as the newbie to the Ray Esports Racing League, why don't you take tonight's starting grid for the first race?
Oh, I would absolutely love to. Tyler Campbell claims pole here in Canada with Kelly Patry alongside him on the front row. Morgan Burkhardt, he's got the only lone Canadian, Zach Burke, as you mentioned earlier, Greg. He's joining him on the second row. Then it's John Vogel and Benjamin Forster on the third row. Deacon Greenfield has Geordie Fike lining up alongside him on the fourth row. Top 10 and the fifth row of the grid completed by Joshua Justice and Joaquin Effinger. Then we got John Casey and Murphy Nichols on the sixth row of the grid with Justin Huffman and David Tamira rounding out your 14-car grid here.
Yeah, and to see that with Justin Huffman, who's currently sitting tied for second in the championship, starting from the tail end of the field. I'm sure not where he wanted to be. But as we get ready, and as we've got the field gridded up behind the pace car, they're going to be heading around for their sighting lap, for their pace lap here in just a few moments. Let's talk quickly about the sponsor for tonight's first race, and that is Alliance Autosports. Based in Columbus, Ohio, Alliance has found success both at the club and professional levels, garnering multiple championships, including 8 SCCA National Championships, 3 SCCA Pro Racing Championships, as well as a USF 2000 National Class Championship. Alliance Autosports team members are dedicated, hardworking, and know what it takes to win. Alliance's SCCA Enterprises Great Lakes Division customer service representative for Formula Enterprises 2 and Spec Racer 4 Gen 3, and their services include arrive and drive packages for Spec Racer 4 Gen 3, for FE2, as well as for Trans Am 2. They offer customer car prep, trackside support, transportation, storage, part sales, data analysis, hospitality, as well as driver coaching and development. To join Alliance Autosport on the winning track, check them out at allianceautosport.com. All right, so we've got the field now trying to scrub in tires and perhaps drag those brakes a little bit. And you can see here, Tim, the massive change in elevation as our drivers come out of turn 2, going into Quebec corner and turn 3, going up towards that hairpin, the Moss corner. And then as we see here, as they come out of Moss and onto the Andretti straight, and lots and lots of elevation change here. And, you know, so many of these corners are just blind, full throttle corners. It really is a challenge.
It is definitely a tricky challenge, especially on the first couple of laps. Colder tyres, the drivers at least with a rolling start compared to what you normally see, certainly with the iRacing officials, is a standing start. Drivers will be able to inject some heat into the tyres, but of course, brake dragging in iRacing, they've supposedly fixed it, so it's not as predominant and as effective as what it once was, but still, you can still generate some heat into the brakes, onto the carcass of the tyres, which will definitely just give maybe that slight edge on this opening laps.
All right, so the pace car on the pit lane now. Our pole sitter, Tyler Campbell, he has the field. The white number 37 on the inside, the red and black number 198 Apache to the outside. Green flag is in the air, and as they drop down in turn 1 and start to roll down the hill towards Clayton Corner. Oh, and we have a wreck at the rear of the field. It looks like Joaquin Effinger, I think, had maybe gone around going off very wide. That is our leader, Tyler Campbell. And Tim, you said at the obvious point of the day, cold tires, as we have John Vogel in the black number 4. He's now fallen off the track and is dropped to the rear of the field. But lots and lots of changes here up at the front as we jump back to the lead. We'll check the replay here in just a minute, but Caleb Patry, he is your leader in the 198 machine. Zach Burke in the yellow and white number 13, he is running second. Morgan Burkhardt running in third. Geordie Fike in the 09 running fourth.
Sorry to cut across you there, Greg. Just as we cut away slightly from us, the leaders were heading through there, Murphy Nichols pretty much just carried straight on at the Mosport and a big impact with the barrier. And I believe he's managed to keep things going, but wow, already drama here in the opening stages, and drivers definitely being affected by the cold tyres, as I mentioned early on. As this is a replay of the start here, Greg. I'm going to want to concentrate. There you go. Just in the background there was the yellow car just making a bit of a spin. There's Tyler Campbell running wide at Clayton. Mentioned about that earlier. That deceptive corner looks like you're taking a lot faster than what you can. I believe it was Benjamin Forster was the guy who was pirouetting on the start-finish straight there, Greg, and started a bit of contact and connection of wheels and bodywork in the early stages.
Yeah, let's take another look here, and we'll see Beans Forster there in that blue and yellow number 231 as he came across the track. I think he got Deacon Greenfield in the 36. Josh Justice in the 99 machine had to avoid, and really caused the front end of the field there to open up even more so after Caleb Patry, our pole sitter, put the car off track on cold tires. As we jump back to live action, where Caleb Patry now has managed to open up a little bit over a second advantage over Zach Burke. Burke under attack now by Morgan Burkhardt, our winner last week at Road America, as they now go side by side. And looks like Burkhardt now is going to overtake the number 13 machine for second as they now come through onto the front straight to complete lap number 2, heading into lap number 3.
Still, despite these big incidents we've had early on, still a couple of quite close battles that we've got going on right now, Greg. Obviously the one we can see on the screen, and let's just mention it, there is the other one, the Tyler Campbell, all over the back of Huffman, and Casey not too far behind, and although these two keep battling, that will allow Casey to really start to reel them in and join in the party and the fight that's going on in front of him. Well, let's say that it looks like Campbell is relatively easily dispatched of Huffman there into Quebec.
Yeah, and there you go. So Justin Huffman now falling back in the 6th position as we look sitting on the pit lane, and it looks to be the, I think one of the sole drivers still on the pit lane, Murphy Nichols. John Vogel, I believe, has checked out of the session. Looks like his day likely now done. And with these short 20-minute sprint races, Tim, it doesn't take long. If you have to make a run down the pit lane, you can essentially call the race over.
Yeah, that is the trickiness of these short races, in that you've got to be brave, you've got to be bold, and you can't sit and wait for half chances to emerge as well. Burkhead really pushing it wide there, kicking up a bit of the dirt on the exit of White.
Yeah, and you can see there, Tim, as he's coming through turn 1, very loose, as he's probably still had some dirt there on the right rear tires. He went for that long ride through the grass coming out of the final corner out of turn 10, as we jump on board now with Zach Burke sitting in 3rd right behind Morgan Burkhardt. And you can see here as these two drivers separated by about 0.3 of a second, and as they come to set up over at the Moss corner with that. And there's that tabletop you talked about, Tim, where they rise up, the track very quickly flattens out, the car gets very light, as they still have a braking moment there to try and get the car set up for the second apex and carry speed onto the Andretti straight.
Oh, that's Campbell off.
Yeah, and there you go. Tyler Campbell, for the 2nd time tonight, has gone off from this time from 6th position. And where was it, Tim? It was at Moss Corner, where he ended up in the grass driver's right, and he has managed to now continue, only losing 1 spot. Let's take a look at the replay.
It's all more tricky, as I was mentioning earlier. These cars do suffer from lift-off oversteer, Greg, especially where you've got the rear of the car going light as well, and getting out onto the dirt. That's certainly not going to help things whatsoever, where the rear end is its lowest state of grip on the whole part of the track. And wow, that's really not the races that Tyler Campbell would have hoped for. He's down 5 places so far. However, Justin Huffman in front of him.
Yeah, he's
really benefited.
I was going to say, I think he only lost 1 position on track, and that was to Justin Huffman, who he had just passed a lap previously. As we jump back to Moss Corner and to live action here, and both Morgan Burkhardt and Zach Burke have caught up to our leader, Caleb Patry, in that black and red number 198 machine. And Burkhardt, as you can see now, certainly within the draft, going down Andretti up towards those S's, and we'll see if Burkhardt, at only 16 years old, a bit racy, Tim, and we may find, for the most part, as we've been watching Morgan Burkhardt through the various races here in the Ray Esports Racing League over the past past year and a half or so. You know, he's shown to be a fairly cautious and patient driver, but you know, we'll see here. Again, knowing how short these races are, and you know, we're already more than a quarter of the way through this 20-minute race. You know, you pretty much have to take the opportunity when it presents itself to you. You can't necessarily sit back and spend an entire race analyzing where your competitors' weak spots are.
Definitely need to be clinical and really turn up the dial on the pressure scale to the absolute maximum, which is what Burkhardt's currently doing. But I tell you what, Caleb Patry is completely and utterly unfazed by this, and you see defending that inside early there, Greg, to the inside, just covering enough, make Burkhardt do all the hard work right around the outside of the S's. Almost banged wheels there, but Burkhardt can hold on. He will have the inside on the entrance to the exit of the S's.
There you go. And as they come into turn number 8 to start off the S's, Morgan Burkhardt does manage to sneak around Caleb Patry. And when they complete lap number 6, Morgan Burkhardt, it will be your new leader. And just even that little side-by-side action, Tim, going down into the S's has allowed Zach Burke to make up maybe about 2.5 car lengths, and he is now right on the gearbox of the 198 machine as well.
It's interesting just watching the different lines there on the exit of Clayton between Patry and Burke. Burke looking a lot more confident and clinical, whereas Patry seems to be almost a little bit overdriving the car right now. We've seen it a few times where he's got a bit loose on corner exit, taking really dicing with death almost, going well beyond the track, kicking up dirt occasionally. And it feels like he's almost holding on for dear life right now, whereas Burkhardt and Burke both seem to be more at one with their machinery. Well, big shout out to Justin Huffman. I was about to say he's up an incredible 8 places, and Tyler Campbell has just displaced him, get himself back past him for the second time today. This is getting close, isn't it?
Yeah, there you go. As Caleb Patry looks to the inside of Morgan Burkhardt going into the S's, not quite close enough. Also, from all the way driver's right, it was really going to impact his ability to carry speed into the rest of the S's and onto the front straight. He's very quickly drops back behind the number 40 machine, and so it is still Burkhardt, Patry, and Burke as they have separated themselves from the rest of the field, from Jordy Fike in the 09 machine by almost 11 seconds, actually about 11.5 seconds. So truly a 3-car breakaway here. But yeah, Tyler Campbell once again trying to work his way through the field, having gotten around Justin Huffman, and and Huffman having started at the very back of the pack, I think obviously was benefited quite a bit from the carnage that we saw on lap number 1. That at the moment he's the hard charger, having made up 7 positions.
I've just been doing a bit of maths in my head right now, and despite the 12-second gap to Fike, there's a potential change for the lead here, Greg.
Yeah, and here they come down into the S's once again, as Campbell now taking drivers right instead of drivers left. He's going to get caught out just a little bit to the outside there, coming through 8, but he's going to have the position into the next corner, turn 9, the left-hander, and he cements that pass, gets it done coming onto the front straight. Caleb Patry now, about halfway through this 20-minute race, retakes the lead here at Mosport.
I was just saying, obviously, about Campbell. As they cross, just looking at the last lap times, Greg, Campbell is nearly 2 seconds quicker. Well, actually, based on the last lap time, a good second quicker. There is mathematically a chance for Campbell to catch up to the back of Fike.
To him, yeah.
It needs to have 0 mistakes to be able to do it. It's just breathing in a little bit there. I think that's getting a bit closer in our battle for the lead.
Yes.
I mean, you could practically throw the perennial blanket over these 3. Half a second separating the podium sitters right now. But Campbell really work cut out, needs 0 mistakes. But as the late great Murray Walker said, Sir Murray Walker said,
sure,
It's yeah, he was detonated, rightly so. You know, catching people is one thing, but passing them is something completely different altogether.
And now we see where Zach Burke's trying to pick which horse to follow here, as Campbell and Burkhardt were coming down into the S's side by side. Burke, I think, as he moved from left to right, was trying to figure out which one might be able to get a nose up on the other and maybe go side by side and take over second position. But he's going to hang back in third as Caleb Patry for one more lap is your leader, with Morgan Burkhardt right behind. But you know, as we were talking in qualifying, Tim, about with these F4 cars, how they are really so capable of driving right under the wing of the car ahead of them, and with them not pushing into, well, getting a terminal push and getting a lot of terminal understeer there. It worked out very well for Morgan Burkhardt as he followed Caleb Patry around for almost a lap and a half, and now coming up into Moss, manages to get the pass done and retakes the lead.
Burke, he needs to be careful here because the clock is running down. There was 7.5 minutes left remaining here in this race. Now, that does provide, you know, plenty of opportunities. Could run about 5 laps to do it. But as you can see, you mentioned earlier, just trying to find a lane as to which, as you mentioned rightly so, you know, which horse to back. As we had Burkhardt and Patry, both alongside one another, and Burke really needs to take the bit between his teeth and try and take control of the situations and control of his own destiny. Otherwise, he could well end up just sitting behind these two and ending up finishing in third. And I tell you what, who wouldn't love a win at your home race?
That is absolutely right. And you know, perhaps the genteel Canadian is going to have to get up on the bit as we continue with our horse racing analogies, and take the attack to Caleb Patry. Now, I've also noticed here, and you mentioned this before, where it appeared as though Patry was I don't want to say overdriving the car, but he was certainly muscling the car around quite a bit more, at least in the early stages, than Morgan Burkhardt. But Patry has been using the curbing here at Mosport quite a bit, which I think in these very stiffly sprung F4 cars could be a bit of a gambit. And you know, we can see where especially the rear end of the car starts to walk around at some points where he does use that curbing. That time there at turn 8, he didn't use it, but he had previously, and it really unsettled the car on him. And you can see right there, Tim, over at turn 10, the final corner, got quite a bit of curbing right at the apex, and the rear end just pretty much got up and walked around on him.
You're absolutely smack on, Greg. These cars can get really unsettled by the curbing, especially when you've got quite high curbs around the S's and into whites as well. They're really aggressive, and I think that's showing right now because he's actually losing a little bit of time to the much more smoother Burkhardt. He's just pulled out an extra couple of attempts, and whereas there was about half a second covering our top 3, that's now out to 8 tenths of a second. So that has grown, as you see, well, visually you can see as they come through Moss yet again, how much it's grown compared to the previous lap. Let's see Burkhardt just moving around there all over the track. He's doing that, he's just trying to break the slipstream to Patry so that he has less of an advantage to close that gap up. However, not quite working this time around. You can see just how much that gap has shrunk as they head down into the S's, and well, Patry needs to think about moving and making a move sooner rather late in here. 4.5 minutes, all that we've got left. Is a little bit of a drift there from Burkhardt on the exit out of whites.
Yeah, as maybe the tires starting to run off just a little bit on these F4 machines, but it was very interesting to watch there as they came down Andretti in towards the S's. The little bit of an accordion there where it appeared obviously that Patry was just starting to get the effects of the draft, and then
Burkhardt's runs wide.
There you go, Morgan Burkhardt. He runs wide, coming out of the corner, and as they make the run now up the hill and going to head towards Moss. Caleb Patry now takes over the lead. That moves Zach Burke in the second. Morgan Burkhardt now, as they come onto Andretti, he's going to fall back into third place with now only 3.5 minutes remaining here. And I was just going to mention, Tim, that perhaps the tires are starting to go away just a little bit, but maybe Burkhardt was pushing that car maybe a little bit more than he was really making noticeable there as he went off and had to try and recover the car in the grass.
Wow, what a move there from Burke right around the side of the S's. And we were just saying about how he needed to take control of this race and the Canadian doing it right now. And we're going to have, just looking at the ground, I believe by my calculations, approximately 3 laps left here remaining. Can Burke defend this? I mean, if he's clever about it, he'll back Patry up into Burkhardt, which will allow Burkhardt to go on the attack, and then he can then use that to then pull away. Although I'm not sure quite this is going to work because Patry is looking incredibly racy, but he needs to be careful because if he doesn't get the move done, Burkhardt's will be waiting in the wings to take that second place away from him.
Yeah, and as they roll back up the hill here and get onto that tabletop, for a moment there, it looked as though Burke had opened the door for Caleb Patry as they came out of Clayton Corner, had run very wide, but Patry just did not get a good enough run up the hill and had to slot back behind. And as they come onto the back straight now, it's to that point where Patry's going to have to worry about Morgan Burkhardt as Burkhardt pulls out to driver's left, and those two drivers go side by side into the S's. Burkhardt makes the outside pass, moves up into second, and perhaps that wasn't that happened a little bit too quickly for Zach Burke. I'm sure Burke had probably expected to come onto the front straight with at least another half a car length to a full car length separating he from Morgan Burkhardt, and now Burkhardt right on the gearbox as they weave across, heading down into Clayton Corner, into turns 2 and 2A here, and then start making their run back up the hill through Quebec and up towards Moss.
Well, you can see only, just over a tenth separating our top two. Burkhardt trying to set up a move there early. Not looking for a move into Moss, just trying to maneuver around Burke by moving around from left to right to make him look into his mirrors. It's a little bit wide there from Burkhardt. That's not going to affect him too much, Greg, but trying to set up a move corners ahead of where he wants to do it. Trying to maneuver and position Burke, get him exactly where he wants him, and he can get the move done, as we see Burke do already once, right around the outside, and Burkhardt's going to try and do the same, what Burke did to Patry.
And Burkhardt's pulled up aside and under braking going into turn 9, gets the pass done. For a moment there, it looked as though Burke was going to be able to hold him up, but now Burke runs wide coming out of turn 10 onto the front straight, and as quickly as you can say, Zach Burke, he now falls from the lead all the way back into third, move Caleb Patry up to second, but that battle for second is not done. But for the moment, Morgan Burkhardt on what is the very last lap as the white flag is in the air here at Mosport. Morgan Burkhardt, your leader.
And he could not hope to be in a much more stronger position than what he's currently in. The biggest gap that he's had for, many a lap, to be fair. And all he needs to do is just to defend for a few more corners. Oh no, Burke's run wide, and he's into the barrier. Is that going to be terminal? No, he's managed to get it going again.
And he's got it back up and going, but he is now out of this battle for the win as Caleb Patry starting to draft up on Morgan Burkhardt, still about 3 car lengths back as they're heading down towards the very end of the Andretti straight. And I think Burkhardt senses that he may have the win here as they go into the S's, not trying to break the draft at all, as we have just 2 more corners to go, a left and then the final right-hand turn onto the front straight, and taking the win in Formula 4 tonight in the Ray Esports Racing League, it's Morgan Burkhardt. Caleb Patry is going to finish second, just 27 hundredths of a second back. Zach Burke, he will come home in third. He'll take the last step on the podium. Jordy Fike, still waiting for him to come. He was almost 15 seconds in arrears. Here he is coming onto the front straight. He's going to come home in fourth, but look at that. Tyler Campbell, who had managed to dispatch with Justin Huffman, is going to come home in fifth and only 1.3 seconds back from Jordy Fike. So there you go. Burkhard Patry, Burke, your winner, your podium. And looks like Justin Huffman putting on the Drift King impression there, coming through the final corner. Didn't know if he was actually going to make it past the past the start finish line there, Tim, but he does manage to come home in sixth ahead of Beans Forrester and Josh Justice.
Incredible drive from Huffman, up at 7th places in the end. You say Campbell just scampered away from him and managed to close up a gap of just over, I think it was 11 seconds to Jordy Fike to cut the down to 1.3 seconds at the line. Like, give him 2 or 3, two, maybe 3 at the most, small laps, and he would have got that move done.
He certainly would have. I'm pretty confident he would have. So, Tim, we've got Morgan Burkhard, a driver of the number 40 All Sports Racing Formula 4, our winner tonight in the green room. Let's bring him on in and get his thoughts on tonight's race.
Morgan, congratulations on the victory. It certainly didn't look like the easiest victory that you've maybe ever had before.
No, for sure not. It was really difficult to judge Caleb and Zach and just like kind of race that while also trying to basically keep the car on the track. It got really hot and the rear end was just kind of all over the place. Got really, really greasy. So struggled with rear grip a lot.
I definitely seem to be that way. Do you find the tires going off and away from you quite often then?
No, it's not really the tires going off. These tires. The interesting thing about this car is that the harder and longer you drive it, the better the tires get, which is good. You don't really get any tire fall off unless you cook them early. So it's just the heat of the track. There's not a lot of grip, and it just slides all over the place.
Well, fantastic. Congratulations on the win here. That's Morgan Burkhart taking the victory here at Canadian Tire Motorsport Park.
All right, thanks so much, Morgan, and thanks, Tim. And what we're going to do, we're going to take a quick little break, and when we come back, we're going to have our MX-5 racers, our Spec Miata racers, on track for their qualifying and for their 20-minute race. You have just seen race 1 tonight from Canadian Tire Motorsports Park, from Mosport, of season number 6, the summer tour of the Ray Esports Racing League. We'll be right back.
Are you struggling for consistency in your sim racing? Does your iRating look like a roller coaster? If so, we have good news for you. The way to get more consistent is to first understand what you're doing differently than the professionals. And VRS is the answer. With our competitive subscription, you will have the telemetry, setups, tutorials, and everything else you need to fully analyze your driving. Our data packs and the ability to compare your driving with the best in the world will show you exactly where to adjust your inputs, change your driving line, and shave seconds off of your lap times. And our powerful and precise Direct Force Pro wheelbase and precision pedals are being used by some of the world's best drivers. All these champions agree that VRS hardware is not just the best on the market, it's also priced well below the competition. So if you're looking to upgrade to direct drive and the best pedals in sim racing, VRS is your answer. If you want to get better, get faster, and make it happen sooner rather than later, you owe it to yourself to find out why so many people are switching to VRS. You'll be so glad that you did. Visit www.virtualracingschool.com and learn why the best use VRS.
All right, and we're back here at Mosport at Canadian Tire Motorsports Park for Season 6 of the Ray Esports Racing League, the Summer Tour, and this is week number 3. You just saw a great battle in Formula 4 where Morgan Burkhardt took the win with Caleb Patry only a couple hundredths of a second back, and Zach Burke had some trouble on that last lap, but he comes home third here from Mosport. And so on track right now for their 15-minute qualifying session is Spec Miata, the Spec MX or the MX5 Cup cars, which I think are very well suited. You know, Tim, I don't think there is a track that maybe the MX5s are not well suited towards. You know, again, very balanced handling, work well in the draft. And you know, they're not so fast that you can't recover in many cases if you do seem to get crossed up.
They're like Genesis, you know, the beginning. It's where you start your iRacing career, as so many of us have. Of course, we now have the Formula Vs as a potential option if you want to go down these single-seater routes. But so many people on the iRacing service began their iRacing careers here in the Mazda Miata, or MX-5 as we call them, on this side of the pond that I'm on. And it always invokes great racing, plenty of door banging. More often than not, most of the drivers will finish with one or maybe no wing mirrors. They're normally the first piece of bodywork to disappear off, but wow, it's always absolutely great racing. Close, firm, but fair and exciting.
Oh, and sometimes not so fair, but definitely exciting. All right, so as drivers now, they're about a third of the way through qualifying, and your provisional pole sitter is Zach Burke, the Canadian, with a 132.903 as his provisional pole time. Wan Chi Lin currently sitting second, only 11 hundredths of a second back from there. And then we've got the 89 of Jamison Huffman. There he is, getting his drift on there in the number 89 machine. Those are your top 3 at the moment. Let's do this, Tim. Let's look back a week ago. to Road America with our Spec Racer Ford race. Now, the Spec Racer Ford drivers, they're not here racing this week. We're going to see them again in 2 weeks because, hint, 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 we're going to be taking next week off for the 4th of July holiday, even though we'd be racing on the 5th of July. But no action. It's going to be dark for the Ray Esports Racing League next week. But the Spec Racer Fords at Road America, big wreck going into turn 5 on the very first lap. John Vogel got into the back of Wan Shi Lin, who we see out here tonight in the MX-5s and the Spec Miatas. Morgan Burkhardt came out of turn 5 side by side with Caleb Patry. Those two drivers got together, and Burkhardt and Patry went off. But let's take a look here at how things ended up after 20 minutes. In his very first outing in the Ray Esports Racing League, Antonio Reyes, in the number 914 car, he took the win over Jamison Huffman, and it wasn't even close. Reyes, from pretty much that big event on lap 1, just walked away from the rest of the field almost 6 seconds up on Jamison Huffman when the checkered flag flew. Huffman finishing in second. Wan Shi Lin, great recovery drive for him, coming home in third with Brian Schmaltz and Caleb Patry rounding out the top 5. And if we take a look at the point standings, it's going to be pretty much how you would expect it here with now, after 2 weeks, 2 rounds, because Spec Racer Ford did run in week 1, it is Wan Shi Lin. He is currently your points leader with a single point advantage over Jamison Huffman. Justin Huffman sitting back in third position. He made up 2 spots in the championship last week. John Wilson currently sitting 4th, and then Josh Justice, driver of that number 99 machine. He's actually tied with Wilson for 4th in the championship, only 2 points back from Huffman, and Justice leapfrogged 5 other drivers in the championship after last week's finish, where Justice had come in 6th. So now let's take a look at MX-5, and we'll make this kind of quick because this is only the 2nd round for the MX-5 drivers. They did race our very first week at Laguna Seca, and we did a recap of this race last week, but taking the win was Giancarlo Schooler, almost 5 seconds over Jamison Huffman. Wan Shi Lin finished in 3rd. Lin only 0.12 of a second off of Huffman's rear bumper when they crossed the stripe at Laguna Seca. Zach Burke finished in 4th, and then Jordy Fike finished in 5th. And so, as it stands now, Giancarlo Schooler, who ran a very clean race, not only separating himself out from the rest of the field, he also did not have any incident points and picks up a bonus point. So he comes into round number 2, your championship leader, with 26 points. Jamison Huffman sitting in 2nd with 21. Then Lin, Burke, and Fike 18, 17, and 16. And you can just decrement 1 point and go back from there all the way back through the field. Forster, Vaccaro, Sancinelli, Greenfield, Brockway, your top 10 in Spec Miata in the Mazda MX-5s.
Never ceases to amaze me just how close. But it transposes, across from what we see on racing to the points as well, of just how close it is. And I know we're at this early stage of the championship, but I'm sure we're going to see this all the way up to Virginia. Is the last round of the regular season before, of course, we've got the runoffs at Summit Point, which is definitely going to be a great way to round out the season at that track.
And I will say there, I cannot wait. One, Tim, because Summit Point Raceway is my home track in real life. I'm actually the track announcer at Summit Point Raceway, and we have a number of drivers in all 3 of our classes that call that their home track in real life as well. So it should make for exciting racing once we get to that event after 9 weeks of the regular season. But here's, we have about 4 minutes left to go in qualifying, and Burkhardt has eclipsed Zach Burke. He is now your provisional pole sitter with a fast time of 1:32.473, a little bit more than 1/10 of a second up on Zach Burke. I mentioned when we had the F4 cars out that I didn't find it surprising that they were not working in the draft to try and set fast times here. I'm a little surprised to see this in the MX-5s, I would have expected to see maybe some of the teammates, for example, Morgan Burkhardt and Jamison Huffman, working together, maybe working the draft to try and, we already have Burkhardt up at the top of the order, but maybe to pull Jamison Huffman a little bit further up in the order.
It is surprising, isn't it? I was thinking that myself, and wow, clearly everyone looking to plough their own furrow here in qualifying. No assistance going on whatsoever. However, just look how close it is currently between Lynn, Huffman and Hayes. Well, throw in Fike as well for good measure. Just over half a tenth, Greg. It's all that separates 4th from 7th. Incredibly close stuff. And well, if you send it out to a 10th, you can include Huffman in there as well.
Yeah, so Huffman's starting to move up through the order a little bit there, and actually sets a slightly faster time than Jordy Fike now, actually almost a half a second faster than Fike is. Just a moment ago, I think we just saw on screen Jordy Fike, who had some issues with the final turn complex in qualifying for the Formula 4 cars. This time comes out of turn 10, runs wide, drivers left, cuts across the track and into the pit wall. Drivers right that last time by. He is in the pit lane right now, and we'll see if he's gonna come out and try to put in a few more flying laps here before qualifying ends in 2 minutes. Of course, he'd only be able to get probably one if he left the pits now. Would probably only be able to get in one more flying lap, and it appears that that he is looks like he's probably going to sit out the rest of qualifying.
Looks very much that way. You need a really clean out lap, and pretty much instantly straight off speed. It was been cutting it fine, even so, and then you can't go through your usual ritual of, you know, warming the tyres, preparing yourself mentally as well as the car, and sometimes becomes a bit rushed and a bit flustered, and don't always end up setting a faster time. And Huffman, one of those drivers, are selecting to sit back and enjoy the action out on track. The last couple of minutes of qualifying as Burkhardt and Burke both join him in the pits, and interestingly, our top 3, even in terms of race finishes from the F4, occupying our top 3 positions in qualifying. Well, actually, scrap that. Young G Lin muscles his way, elbows right out, and gets right amongst them into 3rd, 2nd row of the grid. Well, we know from Young G Lin, incredibly quick in the sister league, the SRF Weekend Warriors to the Esports series. He's incredibly quick in that one, and no doubt that this is going to transpose across similar cars, all about momentum, and a bit of an outside bet for the win here today from me.
And he has been over the last season consistently been at the front of the pack. I believe he's taken 1 win so far in the MX-5s, and as you mentioned, he is certainly, I don't want to call him an expert, but very, very well versed in the Spec Racer Ford platform here on iRacing. And from when Wanchi first joined the Esports Racing League and started racing in the MX-5s, he has come a very long way from somebody that I would consider to be maybe a mid-pack driver to, again, now a top 3, top 4 driver. As the checkered flag is now being displayed, Wanchi Lin is on his final flying lap here as he has just a few more corners as he enters those S's. And Tim, the last lap by, he was so close to the pit wall coming through turn 10. And well, this time he's going to be very close to the pit wall, but on the other side of it as he decides to call off his last flying lap. So let's take a look. We've got 3 drivers, I believe, left on track. One of them is Sean Hayes right here in this yellow number 94 machine, currently sitting 7th in the order here. And as you can see, only 0.04 of a second off of Jordy Fike's position right now on the outside of row number 3. Let's see, and we'll follow Sean Hayes around. We'll see if he can pick up another position, and well, looks like he's going to call off that last flying lap, Tim.
There's no major improvements going on right now. We've already got John Wilson out on track, and he's looking at his times here, Greg. Not sure if we're going to see an improvement for him. He's going to go for it all the way up to the line, currently in 10th. Can he move up a position these tiny stages? Let's find out.
Yeah, he's looking to pick up about 5/10 to get to move up to 9th, and he is not going to be able to do it. It looks like he is going to start on the outside of row number 5 next to Beans Forster. All right, so we should have the grid here in just a moment. While we wait for that grid to come up here, Tim, let's talk about our sponsor for tonight's second race, and that is Grassroots Motorsports Magazine. Built for the true sports enthusiast, Grassroots Motorsports has one mission: to be your personal guide to the sports car world. Whether it's online at grassrootsmotorsports.com, in print or in person, the racers and builders, the car nerds at Grassroots Motorsports, take you behind the scenes and show you how to make your car better. Along the way, they'll give you a taste of everything else this hobby has to offer, from 1,000 horsepower track monsters to cool street cars built in driveways. They also maintain a collection of staff-built project cars, because hands-on technical articles aren't typed behind a desk. They're scribbled down in the garage. To not only read but become part of the story, head on over to grassrootsmotorsports.com. All right, Tim. So it looks like we've got the drivers heading onto the front straight to get gridded up for tonight's second race. I'm going to hand it over to you for tonight's starting grid.
It's an absolute pleasure once again. Morgan Berghard taking pole here in the Spec Mazda race. Zach Burke looking for a bit of redemption. After the F4 race, he's going to start on the front row with Berghard. Yang Jilin, as said, just nipping in there at the death to get himself onto the second row. He joins Caleb Patry on the second row. We've got Jameson Huffman with Geordie Fike on the third row. Sean Hayes, he's joined by Justin Huffman. The two Huffmans there separated by a couple of places, but only one row behind one another. Running at the top 10 and the fifth row of the grid is Benjamin Forster with John Wilson. And then we've got Deacon Greenfield and John Casey taking up to 12th in the 6th row, and then it's Joaquin Effinger and Greg Mack to round out the field here today.
All right, there you go. Our starting field for tonight's race, and you can see here Morgan Burkhardt running his Ukrainian flag liveried number 40 machine. He is your pole sitter tonight. The number 13 machine, that yellow, gray, and white Team Esports Racer machine of Zach Burke. The sole Canadian in the field here tonight, going to start right next to Burkhardt on the outside of row number 1. And a little surprised here, and Tim, I know that this is, I believe, the second time that you've called one of the Ray Esports Racing League races, but a bit surprised to see Jameson Huffman starting back on row number 3. He typically is a starter on your first 2 rows, but to see Justin Huffman start, I believe, on row number 4. Good to see that. As Justin Huffman, a Formula Car racer in real life, runs cars that are very similar to the USF 2000 machines that we have in the iRacing platform. I don't know if I think he's still trying to come to grips a bit with cars that have fenders on them, and that you can't necessarily see where the front wheels are. But he has certainly, over the last couple of seasons, been picking up the pace and becoming much more competitive in these cars.
He has indeed, and you're right, I have had a conversation on this league before. We were at Watkins Glen, and similar-esque track in some ways, Greg. It's all about slipstream and ensuring you stay close. No different than exactly what we've seen, obviously, from the first race in the F4. Really set the tone. However, these drivers, I've said it earlier while we're in the build-up, how they will be rubbing door panels quite often. Well, I think it's trying to place your bets now of how few of them will finish with 2 wing mirrors. I'll be amazed if any of them do.
well, we will definitely have to see. I'll tell you, their very first race at Laguna Seca, I think I would have taken the over on 10. It was pretty much a bash fest, but we'll see how they. We've got some racers here, Tim, that have pretty high I ratings, and they, for the most part, they know how to handle these cars. So we'll see here as Burkhardt and Burke come through the final corners through turn 9. The pace car now on the pit lane. Morgan Burkhardt has the field as they come around the final corner. This 10-turn, we'll call it 4 kilometers. We're in Canada tonight. 4 kilometers, 2.46 miles here, and cheating all the way to the inside. Looks like Deacon Greenfield, I believe, as the green flag is in the air. Burkhardt jumps to the early lead over Zach Burke. Then we've got Caleb Patry, and I think the only thing missing here, Tim, is Tyler Campbell in this opening couple of corners, as we've got Wan Chi Lin running a little bit wide, coming through turn number 2 and 2A, coming through the Clayton corner, as he now has directly behind him Jordy Fike and Jamison Huffman side by side. They finally get things figured out here, as Huffman is going to take over 5th position, move Fike into 6th. They've got Sean Hayes in the number 94 machine right behind him, but now all in a row, I'll just say 6 cars, and actually make it 7 cars, all in a position for the lead as we come out of the Moss corner for the first time.
It's almost like you expected anything different, Greg. On this opening stages, it's always close, and well, especially around the second race, there's not many major braking areas. As Burke absolutely tucked right up behind Burkhardt. I mean, you tell you, if he was any closer, he'd practically be sat in the passenger seat of that Miata with him for company, and needs to be careful, and especially even more so than what we saw in race 1, where you're the car who's trying to make the overtake, but you've got someone positioned behind you, because whereas before, if you get a bit adventurous and it all goes wrong, then it all ends in disaster in single seaters, open wheelers. Whereas in these, you just have a bit of banging of panels, and it's so much easier potentially to actually lose a place while you're trying to gain one.
That's right. It's always it's punch counter punch that you have to anticipate. If you try to make a move on the driver ahead of you, what that driver behind will do to take advantage of your change in attitude here, as we have Morgan Burkhardt, Zach Burke, Caleb Patry, and then we've got Wan Chi Lin. Those 4 drivers have opened up the tiniest of gaps, about a car length and a half only, on Jamison Huffman, Jordy Fike, and Sean Hayes, as they come up over to that tabletop over at Moss and come onto the back straight. And I guess, Tim, you were comparing this track in some regards to Watkins Glen, and I think in many regards you're spot on here. There are not many heavy braking corners here. Of course, at Watkins Glen, especially for the MX-5s, probably the best passing opportunity is going into the inner loop, into the bus stop chicane. And here at Mosport, you don't really have any of these hard braking corners, with the exception of maybe Moss Corner. But if you attempt to pass there, coming out of the slowest corner onto the longest straight, you really run the risk, especially in the MX-5s, of having sometimes 2, maybe 3 cars draft right on by you before you get to the S's.
It's one of the major challenges around here, and it's, like I say, with this lack of a big braking area, you have to get a little bit creative. And I think in these early stages, certainly for the first half, 2/3 of the race, Greg, we're going to see clean racing. I think everyone's going to pretty much remain a little bit processional. However, it's when it gets into those dying minutes, I think the gloves will fully come off, and they'll start trading places and paint left, right, and centre as they jockey for position and try and make progress in the packs that they're currently in.
And you can see here, one driver making progress is Zach Burke, who early on here, as we are now working lap number 3, manages to get around our pole sitter, Morgan Burkhardt. And I suspect, Tim, given that we don't have any of those hard braking corners, and really, a lot of your passing opportunities are going to be up to using the draft here on the back straight, but also carrying exit speed and maybe some fortitude through some of these blind sweepers that are running either uphill or downhill. I think essentially what at least early on both Burke and Burkhardt really need to do is limit the fighting. If you see one driver, you know, trying to draft past you, maybe perhaps you don't defend it, let them go, and that way the two of you can carry speed, because at this point, you know, I think the key is to try to separate, if you're the two lead drivers, maybe separate yourself from the rest of the field if you can. And so far that hasn't happened. We have the top 4 cars, as we can see here, maybe carrying a little bit more pace than Jamison Huffman and Jordy Fike at this point, but even they haven't really separated themselves out, and I think Huffman and Fike may still find themselves within the draft of our top 4 cars.
We are absolutely smack on the point there as Lynn's managed to get past Huffman up into 4th. Good progress, however, still Lynn down on 1 place after Kelly Patry displaced him early on, and these top 2 of Burke and Burkhart need to work together, as she said, to pull away from Patry, or even potentially Patry along with them, and then start to battle. It's all about the teamwork, and I was just trying to listen out there. Was there a bit of bump drafting going on? I'm not too sure there was. There you go.
There
seen a bit
is.
Yeah, there is. You can see the bumps and the bangs and the contact being made as Burkhart pushing Burke along right now. But it's not quite working, because look, Patrick, Lynn and Jameson Huffman all right in there with a shout, and equally Jordy Fike is hanging on in there for dear life, but still onto the back of them, about half a second down, but still managing it. And then we've got this bit of a gap here down to a pack that includes John Wilson. You see him on stream right now. He's got in front of him Greenfield, Justin Huffman, and Benjamin Forster. Cuts up in this secondary cluster of cars.
Yeah, and you can see there Greg Mack, who started at the tail end of the field. He's in that very light blue and gray number 2 machine at the tail end of that pack. He did not put a time in qualifying, started 14th. He's gotten around both Casey and Effinger. Greg Mack, he's had perhaps not the best of luck the last number of rounds here in the Esports Racing League in the MX-5s. That seems to get caught up in some early race incidents. Perhaps better that he didn't put in a time here this evening and started from the back of the pack. Maybe has a little bit better opportunity to work through as we come on to the Andretti Straight, and Morgan Burkhardt look at the draft past Zach Burke, and Caleb Patry is going to come along for the ride, as Zach Burke is going to have to get maybe a little defensive coming into turn 9 as they go, in turn 8 and 9 as they go through and into the S's here side by side. You can see those very quick taps of the brake from both Burke and Burkhardt, and Burke comes right across the nose of the number 40 machine. He is going to managed to hold on to the lead, but there you go. Look at this, as we had gone 2 by 2 into the S's, Wanshi Lin manages to set up Caleb Patry, and so now move Wanshi Lin back into 3rd, the position he started at tonight. Move Caleb Patry into 4th with Jamison Huffman right behind him, as our drivers come down out of turn 1, run down the hill in the Clayton corner, and they're going to all get in line here once again. And we'll see here. It looks like Huffman has some designs on Caleb Patry's 4th place.
Everyone queuing up behind Burke, like they're taking their ticket for the cheese counter and waiting politely in line. Well, for now, Lynn making a bit of progress there, whereas Beck and Burkhardt remaining content in 1st and 2nd respectively for those 2. But equally, Greg, they're not managing to pull away despite bump drafting that we saw, especially last time around from Burkhardt. They're really trying to push Burke along and get away from the pack behind, which is really, really looming large. Lynn, Patry, Huffman, Fike all in there. Hayes isn't too far off either. You just see him on the tail there in the 94 machine. And is this going to be a bit of a change on the lead potentially? I tell you what, Lynn's having a good go right around the outside.
He is, and a little bit of contact between Burke and Burkhardt as they come through turn 8, and that maybe loosened up Burkhardt just enough that Zach Burke was able to hold on to the position. And now Caleb Patry gets back around the number 30 machine, but not only Caleb Patry, but Jamison Huffman as they come down the hill through turn 1. Looks like Huffman in that blue with the red number 89 machine, able to clear the number 30 machine as well. And Jordy Fike coming around for the party as well. Wan Chi Lin now drops all the way back from 3rd back to 5th position, and he's got to do everything he can now to hold off Fike and Hayes.
He's really got his work cut out down there as we reach that halfway mark in the race. Any second now. And Lin has had a disastrous couple of corners. This is the big issue though, where if you get caught offline, it becomes so much more challenging for you to get back onto the line here, Greg, because you then find that opportunistic drivers, when you're in a big pack like this, will then follow through the car that's making the overtake, and it just compounds the issue. And that was how Lin dropped those 2 places incredibly quickly, despite battling with Burkhardt and looking to make a move on him to get past him into 2nd. And looks like that bump drafting has stopped, so maybe a different alternative tactic of forming a bit of a roadblock across the track.
Yeah, and you saw that as Burkhardt, as they came out of Moss, Burkhardt went all the way driver's right. Then we saw Burke cover it. Burkhardt then shot back to the left-hand side. And I think all that movement side to side instead of forward limited his ability to make a run and get past Zach Burke as they came into the S's. So Burke, again, is going to lead the rest of the field as they come down through that downhill fast right-hander here at turn number 1 with Caleb Patry, Jameson Huffman, Wan Chi Lin, Jordy Fike just behind. And, you know, as I'm watching this, Tim, you know, and I think maybe the bump drafting is over, at least for the time being, as we are now over halfway through this 20-minute race. But what we're seeing from most of these drivers are very similar exit speeds through most of these corners, and certainly if you get offline to defend or you know, somebody just ahead of you goes and manages to creak that door open, it definitely is advantageous for you to follow right on through. I mean, that's the effect of the draft here. You see it even in NASCAR. If you get caught to the outside behind, you know, and pull out to make a pass, and you still got a line of 30 cars to your left, a good portion of those 30 cars are going to drive right on by you. And at this point here, we had been seeing Caleb Patry go with Morgan Burkhardt. Now he does it very, very late. But for the moment there, he left Morgan Burkhardt all out by himself. The big difference is Burkhardt now finally able to carry a little bit more speed into the S's than Zach Burke. And he now is going to take over the lead with just 6.5 minutes remaining here for Mosport.
It's one of these moments where you come to most racing where you've got no chance of trying to call this. This could go anywhere. We thought it was close in the F4 earlier, but it hasn't really got a patch on what these guys are currently throwing out right now. And so Patry looking a little bit like he's trying to make a move there, deciding to back out of it. As I mentioned, needs to be really, really careful. We've seen what's happened to Lin. Went on the attack, lost 2 places because he could not get the move done. And actually running the risk right now because those top 2, Burkhardt and Beck, they've got a real stranglehold on the top 2 positions of not just this group, but also the race result overall for now.
All right, and as they come out of Moss, there's a little bit of contact there between Wan Chi Lin and Jordy Fike, running 5th and 6th. And it looked like Fike might be having some connectivity problems, but now Caleb Patry, he is trying to take advantage of a fairly poor exit out of Moss by Zach Burke. And Patry, of course, has the benefit of the draft behind Morgan Burkhardt, our leader. Patry gets the pass done. Now the question is, as we maybe move to the move out from behind the cockpit, if he still has Zach Burke there beside him, and he does indeed, as Burke makes his way down to the apex. And as they come out of the S's, he is going to manage to work his way back around Caleb Patry. So move Zach Burke back up in the 2nd place. And Wan Chi Lin now taking the battle to Jamison Huffman there as those two drivers come down out of turn number 1. Wan Chi Lin still sitting in 5th, having started 3rd tonight, and tries to get around Huffman, cannot get it done. And it looked like Zach Burke, maybe some, probably not Zach Burke, Jordy Fike, maybe a little bit of an issue there as he was trying to find a way past Huffman and Wan Chi Lin as well.
It's ridiculously close between these guys right now. Also, just keep you up to date, Forster involved in the battle with Huffman. That's Justin Huffman and Greenfield. Those three separated by around about 6/10 of a second. You can see definitely that, wow, Greenfield more the aggressor versus Justin Huffman, who's trying to defend while still trying to stay onto the rear end of Forster.
All right, and here we go, coming down Andretti. Wan Chi Lin once again looking to take back that 4th position from Jamison Huffman all the way driver's left. Now switches back to driver's right, and then moves back to driver's left as they go into the S's. But it looks like Huffman's going to be able to hold off Lin for the moment. And as Lin now starts to fight with Huffman, seemingly almost every corner. Here, Tim, as we've got just a bit over 4 minutes remaining, you're starting to see perhaps where Burke and Patry opening up perhaps the slightest of gaps back to our 4th, 5th, and 6th place runners.
You can start to see where they are starting to pull away ever so slightly, bit by bit, clawing at that gap, as going to see a little bit of a change of position there, but no. Remaining as they are, despite fanning across the track there before they zip back into line. Making it through. Really tricky corner, that one there, Greg, as they just head through. The car drops down away from you, and it's off camera. The front end wants to push out wide. It's really tricky to keep that tucked in, while then also preparing for the braking zone of Moss, which, as we said earlier, incredibly tricky, braking uphill, and also still braking while the rear end of the car is light.
He's
while
rotating in light,
exactly, all the weight of the car is in the front, and then being pushed down where the natural rotation of the car changes. But wow, it looks like we've got a real tussle for this lead.
And look at this, as Zach Burke decided to just stick to the tail of Morgan Burkhardt to hopefully draft and push past Caleb Patry. Patry, for one moment, was able to actually, all alone, without the benefit of a draft, get past both Zach Burke. Oh, and Burke goes wide coming out of turn 10. He's going to contact Wan Chi Lin. Those two drivers get together. There are your hanging door mirrors, by the way, Tim. But that is going to really open things up at the front of the field, as it's now Morgan Burkhardt, Caleb Patry, and then Jamison Huffman with a fairly big distance now. Jack back to Jordy Fike, Sean Hayes, and Zach Burke.
It's really
let's take a look at the replay.
Up.
And here we go, going into the S's, and let's see what happens as Burke comes out of turn number 10. And you can see the rear end, Tim, just started walking away from him just past the apex.
I really feel for Lin, the innocent bystander in all of that, just trying to regain the places that he'd lost, and in the blink of an eye, it all falls apart for young Chi Lin.
All right, and so we've got now 2 minutes remaining, and Morgan Burkhardt now has managed to open up almost a full second advantage on Caleb Patry and Jamison Huffman, who are now working side by side down the Andretti straight. And we'll see how that works out. It looks like the 09 of Fike. He's picked his. Well, I thought he'd picked his horse. He had stuck behind Jamison Huffman for just a moment, and may have helped Huffman push past Caleb Patry. So for the moment now, Jamison Huffman in that number 89 machine moves into second. His teammate in the lead, Caleb Patry, drops back in the third. Then we've got Fike and Sean Hayes. Zach Burke, who did manage to recover the car, keep it rolling, now sitting back in a very distant 6th position, as he's just now coming onto the front straight. And here we go, 1 lap remaining from Mosport, Tim.
Wow. Where has the time gone? Inside the last minute of it's been incredibly close racing, and as you say, last lap. This is the last set of opportunities to get your move done. And Huffman and Patry, wow, really pushing hard, but this is all into Berkar's hands, who's gallivanting away up in the head. You can see him just about there as the cars swoop around the exit of Moss. There he is. That's the gap of 1.6 seconds nearly that he's got over this following two, squabbling over who's going to finish second and who's going to be demoted third, but it could all end in tears. We've seen it numerous times before.
Yes, we have.
These last lap battles.
All right, and here we go, coming down into the final set of corners for the very last time here from Mosport, and it is Morgan Burkhardt heading into the S's. A little tap between Jamison Huffman and Caleb Patry as they make that quick right, then left, then right onto the front straight, and Patry getting his elbows out. He's going to muscle past Jamison Huffman in the 89 machine, and now jumping to the inside and jumping over the curb is Jordy Fike. Is he going to be able to take away third position from Jamison Huffman? Crossing the stripe, it's going to be Morgan Burkhardt taking the win. Caleb Patry will finish second. Jamison Huffman manages to hold off Jordy Fike by 1/1000th of a second at the line. Fike just out of the money in fourth. Sean Hayes comes home in fifth. Then Zach Burke. So unfortunate for Zach. He's going to finish sixth. Deacon Greenfield seventh. He beats out both Justin Huffman and Beans Forster, finishing eighth and ninth. Greg Mack will round out the top 10. So, Tim, maybe not the beating and banging that we had expected at the beginning here. Maybe a few more drivers came home with both wing mirrors on the doors than we had expected, but still a great battle over 20 minutes in the MX-5s and in the Spec Miatas here from Mosport.
Incredibly great battles up and down the field. She said a bit more of a sedate affair than maybe what we came to expect here. However, that last lap, some spectacular moves as everyone was really pushing to the absolute maximum.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, and I think I mentioned early on that, for example, Morgan Burkhardt at 16 years old, he's just now started. He's been in go-karts for years, but he's now in real life sports car racing, as is Jamison Huffman, as is Deacon Greenfield. Now it's their very first seasons, and I think as more and more of these drivers that are with us are getting seat time and lap times in behind the wheels of real racing cars, and I think as they realize what the ramifications are if you start banging doors, especially in club racing and amateur racing, where you're doing the work yourself to get the car repaired. I think it maybe affects how they race in the virtual world as well, and maybe you do find them where they race maybe a little more cleanly, and are not as they say, wrecker or checker.
It's also the costs as well of real world racing. If you break a body panel so much so the stewards deem it unsafe, especially then you need to replace it, and it all costs money, and someone's got to pay for it somewhere.
That's it, and it's not just $11.95 US for another car on the iRacing platform. All right, let's do this, Tim. We've got for the moment our third place finisher and also our first place finisher sitting in the waiting area. Why don't we bring in Jamison Huffman, driver of the number 89 Spec Miata, finishing third tonight from Mosport.
Jameson, welcome along to the coverage move. Wow, that was a real tight fraught affair. All about the slipstream, it seemed, today here from Mosport.
Yeah, it was. I mean, that's kind of how the Miata races usually go. Is just trying to stick with the pack and get the slipstream down these straights to get up there next to them on the corners. Then it's just positioning who's in front. If someone's in front going 2x2, it can really mess up your 2x2. And that's how I actually got by Wanshi.
In terms of your tactics, was it to play a little bit more conservative maybe and go a little bit easier and protect your car, or were you just pushing the whole time you're out there?
I was kind of just driving and pushing the car. Kind of if I gotta run, then I gotta run, at least in a safe spot. because there were times that I could have gone into Moss Corner just under braking past, Wanchi or Caleb, just because everyone got so stacked up, but not a safe spot to do it. So yeah, it was mainly just waiting for someone to make a mistake and then take that and just kind of keep trying to keep going up.
Hi, Jameson. Great to talk to you, and congratulations on making it onto the podium here with that third place at Canadian Motorsport Park.
Thanks.
Greg, I understand we're standing by with our race winner here today in the Spec Miatas.
That's right, we can do that. Jameson, thanks so much for joining us. And let's bring in Morgan Burkhardt, driver of the number 40, Team Watson Racing, All Sports Racing. Mazda Miata, our winner tonight.
Morgan, congratulations. Another win here, and wow, what a victory.
Well, thank you very much. That was that one was interesting. We had a much larger pack than the F4, and we had to kind of attack while defend and keep on people so that you don't get caught into the next corners. And if you don't make moves, you're going to get passed. So we had to start to move up and get around Zach. I was going to be content to kind of sit behind him and just wait until the final, but I noticed that Caleb and Jameson were starting to get a little racy behind me, so I kind of had to make my moves, and then kind of just played it by ear every single lap after that.
And we saw you open up quite an extensive gap, to be fair. Certainly by the standards that we've experienced the whole race long. On the final lap, was it a big sigh of relief from you and time to relax and just bring the car home, or were you still pushing to make sure that he couldn't catch you?
Well, it was definitely a good thing that I got the little gap at the end. I figured out but something subtle with the setup to help with the tire wear, and I can still push them and use less tire than everybody else can. And it's also a little bit of a driving style thing that aids with that. So I did have a lot more tire than everybody else did at the end, and yeah, I was super happy to get a bit of a gap, because then I could just kind of back off and not really have to push it through the problem areas.
Understandable, and wow. Congratulations, Morgan, on the victory here today. The Canadians are at Motorsport Park. We'll see you in a couple of weeks' times, undoubtedly, at Watkins Glen.
I'll see you there.
Take care. That's Morgan. The winner here today, Greg.
Yes, sir. Our double winners. He takes the wins both in Formula 4 and also in the Mazda Miatas and Spec Miata. And so, Tim, you let the cat out of the bag, and I think I mentioned it up front, that we are going to be off next week, next Tuesday night. We're going to have an extended 4th of July Independence Day celebration here in the Ray Esports Racing League, but we are going to be back in 2 weeks, Tuesday night, July 12th, at our regular time, 9 p.m. Eastern Time, and we are going to be at Watkins Glen International. We're going to have the return of the Mazda MX-5s and also the Spec Racer Fords, the Formula 4 cars. They're going to take the week off. So make sure to join us. And Tim, I have this feeling that perhaps you're going to be joining us for the rest of the season. And if it goes as well as it did tonight, we're all just so happy to have you here as part of the Ray Esports family.
Well, when you have great racing out on track, for ourselves as commentators, it just makes it all the more enjoyable and all the more easier and all the more entertaining. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to spending the rest of the season with yourself, Greg, calling this one out.
Very, very cool. All right. So for Tim Cox, for Dennis Branch, back behind the scenes, and thank you so much for holding the fort down tonight, Dennis. I'm Greg Ginsburg. We'll see you in 2 weeks, Tuesday night, July 12th, from Watkins Glen International. Have a wonderful Independence Day, everybody, and have a great couple of weeks off.